Okay, so this video is going to do a quick refresh on our log properties. So we have three properties that we might use regularly. The first one is called the product property, and it's when we have a product right here in the argument of our log. And so we can split that or expand that into two logarithms, where that argument splits into two and we have the sum of those two logs. That's called the product property. Then we have the quotient property, where we have the quotient in an argument of a log right here. And we can split that as well into two logs, but instead we are subtracting those two logs, and it does matter. The numerator has to be in the first log, and the denominator, it has to be in the log that we are subtracting. And then we also have our power property. So that is when we have something to a power, and to expand that, we can take that power and bring it down in front, just like that. So we have the product property, quotient property, power property. The other property that we have that you might see is called the change of base formula. And so that says that if we have a log, let's just say base u of v, then what we can do with that is we can make it the quotient between two logs with any new base b of our choice. So if you notice, we have the argument of this log becomes the argument of the log in the numerator, and the base of this log becomes the argument of the log in the denominator. And we get to choose a new base, and it can be anything as long as we choose the same base for them both. Okay, so in this example, we are trying to find log base 4 of 81 over 7. And so my goal is going to be to expand that log so that I can use the information we have to find out what this log is. So we have log base 4 of 81 over 7. And so the first thing I might notice is that I can definitely use the quotient property to expand this as log base 4 of 81 minus log base 4 of 7. And so then I see that I have log base 4 of 7 right here that I can replace. And the other thing that I notice is that 81 is equal to 9 squared. So I can write log base 4 of 9 squared. But I can't replace log base 4 of 9 yet because I have log base 4 of 9 squared. So I can use the power property to bring that 2 down in front. And now I can replace log base 4 of 9 with 1.6. And so that will give me 3.2 minus 1.4. And for sake of efficiency, that gives us 1.8. Here's another example. The idea is similar, but now instead of knowing the values of these logs, we now just have them labeled as variables. But our goal, or the way that we start, is still going to look the same. We're still going to start by expanding. And so I again see that I can use the quotient property here. And now I also notice that 121 is the same thing as 11 squared. And so I can pull that 2 into the front. And now I can go ahead and evaluate or make replacements for what I know. I know that log base 3 of 11 is a, so that becomes 2a. And then I also know that this says 3 to what power is 3, and I definitely know that that is 1. So I get 2a minus 1. So now we're going to use the same properties, but we are going to condense. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take this problem, and I'm going to write the over 2 part in front as a 1/2. 1/2 log base 5 of A plus 1/2 log base 5 of B. And that way I can use the power property to take that power that was written in the front and make it a power on the argument. So I now have A to the 1/2 and B to the 1/2. And I know that a power of 1/2 is the same thing as a square root. So that becomes log base 5 of the square root of A and log base 5 of the square root of B. And now I can see how I have addition here. So I can use the product property to go ahead and combine these into one logarithm with base 5, where I am multiplying C times the square root of A times the square root of B. And there's my answer. Now here's one that I am going to expand. And so I'm going to use that product property to make this log base 6 of 5 to the 4th plus log base 6 of square root of 3. And I know that the square root is the same thing as a power of 1/2. And now I can use my power property to pull that in front. And I have expanded it. And let's do one example where we use the change of base formula. When I look at this, I know that the square root of 125 is not going to give me 25. So I don't really have any options right now, so I might use the change of base to help me. And so I know that I can rewrite this as log of 25 divided by log of 125. And I can go ahead and put any new base here as long as I choose the same thing. And so I am going to choose the base 5 because I know that 5 squared is 25 and 5 cubed is 125. So 5 to what power is 25? That's 2. 5 to what power is 125? That's 3. So I get 2 over 3. And that's how I can use the change of base to help me solve more complex logarithms.